During a preview, Forspoken devs described their black protagonist in cringe-inducing ways. Black folks were surprisingly absent during the Forspoken hands-off event. So, I saw Arch covering this earlier, and I knew I had to talk about this too. So Squeenix is putting out another game, and they did not miss their chance to virtue signal. Oh, look, we got a strong black woman as our protagonist. And despite all their virtue signaling, they're still getting eaten alive by the woke. And all I gotta say is, you get what you fucking deserve. I have no sympathy for anybody who bends over for the woke only to then be eaten alive by them. They deserve it. This is the audience you wanted. This is the audience you can fucking have. And we're just gonna sit back and laugh. If this leads to, like as Arch described it, a woke civil war, great. I hope it happens. I hope they tear each other apart and they never recover. And damn, another thing Arch mentioned in his video. So he mentioned that, him and Sargon went to some YouTuber convention in Airstrip 1 a few years ago. And the one thing that stuck in his mind were like these bread tubers, these left-wing YouTubers, when they gave panels, like a recurring theme was that they were scared of their own audience. They admitted that every time they put out a video, they were scared of being canceled by their own audience. And all I have to say is, good. You fucking should be. Do you have a problem with it? Stop catering to that audience. It's not hard. I have zero sympathy for any of these morons. It's because of people like them that this toxic cancer keeps spreading. I hope they all get canceled by their own audiences. They deserve it. They're the ones that keep spreading this shit. So, already got an update. The hip-hoppy walk comment, yeah, we're going to get there, was mistakenly attributed to a writer and not motion capture and voiceover director Tom Keegan, who actually made the comments. We have also updated the attribution of the urinalist question in the piece. Oh, wow. This is the closest to real urinalism Kotaku's ever done. Yeah, let's encourage this. Yeah, every time someone just openly tries to virtue signal and go for the woke audience, I fucking hope they get torn apart by said audience. When I was scheduled for a preview of Forspoken, formerly Project Athea, there were 3 questions I was pressed to know. 1, how the team went about handling the portrayal of its black protagonist. 2, what the gameplay was like. And 3, how Forspoken stands out among other fancy action role-playing games. You notice the order there? You notice like the numbers 2 and 3, if you are a real games journalist, those are legitimate. What's the gameplay like, and how are you going to stand out among other similar games? But nope, the number 1 priority for this self-proclaimed journalist is how they went about handling the portrayal of the black protagonist. You see the priorities of current year game journalism? This is why nobody trusts them. This is why no one reads their shit anymore. This is why they're failing. So while Squeenix's hour-long preview provided a serviceable, if not clinical, job addressing some of those questions, my initial curiosity has turned into trepidation. Forspoken was a game by former Final Fantasy 15 dev Luminous Productions. Oh, so we know the gameplay is going to be boring as fuck, huh? Which follows New Yorker Frey Holland as she's isekai'd into a beautiful and cruel fantasy world of Athea. So is Anime News Network going to come in here now and start shitting on this game too because all isekai are bad? I look forward to seeing that part of the Civil War brew. The world that awaits her is overrun by a blight called the Break, which turns animals and humans alike into monstrous creatures. Oh, so it's the woke virus? And to make matters worse, the Tantas, not the Tatas, unfortunately, a matriarchy who once served as Athea's benevolent leaders have turned into evil witches. Spoiler alert, they've been evil witches all along. They infiltrated by pretending to be benevolent, and then once they got the power, the mask was off. Wow. It almost seems like Squeenix is making a statement about wokeness so far. Luckily for Frey, she's been imbued with magical powers that make her immune to the break thanks to her fashionable talking jewelry companion, Cuff. Ooh, a black woman with a cuff, huh? Ooh, hashtag not a good look. To find her way back home, Frey must use her newfound powers to defeat the break and the Tantas. That's right. You take down that matriarchy, girl. You go, girl. While I don't get to play, I didn't get to play Forspoken during my preview, I was able to watch an early build footage of the game during pre-recorded stream. The preview showcased Forspoken's magic system, parkour, and combat in action. It also gave me an opportunity to hear about Frey's development from the game's lead writers. The magic in Forspoken runs on the enchantment system Squeenix calls the nail system, which you can think of as something similar to what would happen if a mage and enchanter upgraded an everyday item. The nail system leans heavily on ancient Egyptian and Babylonian historical influences, where the act of painting one's nails displays one's status and power. Oh my god! And we wanted to represent the ability enhancements in the form that's part of Athean history, as well as merging with something that's relatable to our modern world. The theme of duality is central to Forspoken, and so as players explore the game, they'll come to learn that the nails are heavily embedded in Athean lore and culture. However, Frey also views them through a modern lens, much like we would, Squeenix said. Isn't it great that the company that used to make good Final Fantasy games, that used to make, or that still does make decent Dragon Quest games, is spending money on this? Yeah, this game is sounding like cultural appropriation. I know where you coming from, man. Now, the break works similar to how Fade Rifts work in Dragon Age Inquisition, with waves of enemies bursting through that must be dealt with. Luminous Productions' Final Fantasy 15 Origins comes into play with Forspoken's freeform combat, which includes frenetic enemies and flashing red numbers that pop up when you deal massive damage to those enemies. But the combat itself is pretty slow and boring, though. Another key component of Forspoken's gameplay that sets it apart from other fantasy games is its magic parkour system. Magic parkour. So it's like Dishonored? Which is best showcased in his Game Awards trailer. And the trailer, Frey can be seen traversing mountains at breakneck speeds, as well as fashioning herself a floating skateboard to cross a river. Although the early gameplay footage I saw in the hands-off preview looked rougher than the feats on display in the Game Awards trailer, Squeenix assured us the game would look better and feel amazing upon launch. Yeah, they said the same thing with games like freaking Watch Dogs. Remember that? While Forspoken didn't appear to be reinventing the wheel when it came to its magic open world, the leading actress, Ella Balinska, still stood out to me. Squeenix said his decision was obvious given the desire to have a strong female lead as a protagonist. And yet, they keep canceling anime games that have had that for ages. We wanted our hero and other characters in Forspoken to be reflective of our diverse audiences and relatable to our players. Are you guys getting the hint? Squeenix is letting you know they have fallen. So we decided to model Frey after casting actress Bella Balinska. We felt that she embodied our envisioning of Frey perfectly. The meeting the lead writers behind Forspoken was meant to curb any fears I had about how its protagonist was going to be handled. It ended up sparking more unease than I initially had about the game. And here's where we get to the fun part. At one point in the pre-recorded Get to Know the Writers section, I learned that Forspoken has been in development since current D-3, with Telltale Games' The Walking Dead writer Gary Whitta and Uncharted's head writer and creative director Amy Hennig laying down the groundwork for the game's world concept and narrative while it was in pre-production. Well, at least the pre-production side of it may be decent, because Amy Hennig at least has actual talent. So the torch was then passed to the game's lead writers, Allison Reimer and Todd Stashwick. That's probably where all the bad ideas came from, who finalized the story and script for the game. While all these high-profile names were all well and good, especially from their previous association in crafting other AAA games, last I checked, none of them were black people. Uh-oh! Uh-oh, it's not enough that, you got whammons in there. No, they have to be black too. Question marks rapidly started to fire off in my head about the game's handling of Frey, which were only festering by how its writers went to describe working with Balinska. My newfound fears weren't helped when Reimer and Stashwick described Frey's origin story, which came off as a tired amalgamation of black stereotypes. Well, that's what you ask for. Don't forget, this is exactly what they ask for every time. If they made a black character that didn't behave stereotypically, then they'd be crying that, oh, it's basically just a white character in blackface. There's no way to win. So just stop trying to appeal to these lunatics. No matter what you do, they're going to complain. Those stereotypes include having her being very angry, her having fallen through cracks of society, and being on the verge of prison, and before being teleported to Althea. The cherry on top of my newfound dread was motion capture and voiceover director Tom Keegan describing Balinska's mannerisms during her motion capture performance as having a very hip-hoppy kind of walk. I hope you get eaten alive by the audience you were trying to appeal to. You deserve each other. I am going to get my gasoline and pour it all over this dumpster fire because this show is great. I wasn't the only journalist to find Stashwick's awkward remark and the lack of black writers shown in our preview as harrowing. When Axios' Stephen Totillo asked if there were any black developers or consultants involved with the Forspoken in the Squeenix video chat, he didn't receive an answer during our preview. And to be fair, no, that's perfectly fair. Hey, Squeenix, at least half of your executives in Japan have to be black now. So later on, he received a question sheet that rounded up our media questions. Sadly, the answer came off as a canned response that leaned heavily on the hands-off preview, where Balinska passionate feedback throughout her motion capture process was regarded as invaluable feedback for the team. We worked closely with a number of consultants from BIPOC backgrounds to help portray Frey's character and tell her story from her perspective, Squeenix said in the frequent asked questions, adding that Forspoken's supporting cast was dominated by whammons and several whammons of color. Look at all the tokens we got, guys. This is great. And while I don't doubt that Luminous Productions consulted black folks in how they went about creating Frey, being greeted by white writers and only hearing about consultation from a secondhand account didn't do them any favors for me as a player who's been starving for black representation in games, both on screen and in crafting their narratives. I'm sure you could probably find a few indie game studios wanting to start up in Africa. Why don't you just signal boost them in their games? There's got to be a few. When we have discussions about representation and changing the way games are made, it feels like they're often left at superficial changes, like the face of the game cover or at a nearly interchangeable protagonist. Sure, they have black actors like Balinska and Janina Gavankar as the antagonist Tantasila, but without black writers or consultants featured prominently during the preview, the game didn't come off well for me. Yup. Squeenix bent over and tried to appease this crowd, only to be told that they didn't do enough. So the wince-inducing descriptions levied at the protagonist could have easily been avoided had anyone with melanin been given meaningful positions of power on the project. That's bullshit, by the way. That is an absolute lie. Because actually, as it was a Go Fukius Feru points out, remember when the black BBC or Big Black Cock writer said Idris Elba didn't play a convincing black character because he didn't eat Cajun food? Yep. Even if they had black representation, it wouldn't have been the correct kind of black representation for him. There's literally no fucking way to win. So just stop trying. Don't play this game. Ignore the woke. If you try to appeal to them, you will fail. Another concern I had going into the preview was how often Frey and Cuff would quip at each other during gameplay, which was a Marvel movie amount from both its initial trailer, the Game Awards trailer, and my hands-off look. These quips include swearing during the banter between Frey and Cuff during combat encounters. In response to this concern, Squeenix said the intention for the banter was to showcase Frey's complexity as a complex, imperfect, and raw character, while making her more relatable as a self-insert for players to the bonkers setting she now finds herself in. And here's your mistake, Squeenix. You can't have a minority character that has any flaws. She has to be perfect in every way, or else you're racist. And when Frey is in battle, we really wanted to show her vulnerable side and the fear she's experiencing when she finds herself in situations out of her own control, but also how she toughens up in order to survive. We also carefully considered how would we respond ourselves through a modern lens if we were thrown into this fancy setting with all its magical creatures and mysterious powers. That depends. If I was thrown into a fantasy setting as I am right now, like basically like a level 1 villager NPC in like a fucking level 40 epic level D&D world, I'd probably just be shitting my pants. But if you gave me like fucking superpowers to fit the setting, oh man, like one of my biggest problems would be like not getting in over my head, because I'd just be enjoying the new powers. For those put off by Frey and Cuff's banter, Squeenix is apparently still in the process of adjusting the exact frequency, content, and volume of their banter. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Most games, it gets annoying, because even if you have a lot of diversity in the dialogue, if you play long enough, you've heard it all. It eventually just gets annoying and repetitive. Like, how many times have you guys had that happen, where you're just like, is there any way to turn this shit off? Like, is there a setting where you can turn off the character dialogue? Because it's actually annoying me hearing the same phrase over and over again. Yeah, pawns, fucking pawns. Yeah, so somebody clearly got PTSD from Dragon's Dogma too. Overall, I'm not too pressed by Frey's quips so much as I'm worried about how she's going to be represented in the game as a black character who's only had white writers. Yeah. Now, how racist is that statement? Man, hopefully my apprehension is like a friend giving a bad summary of a film and the actual game holds up better than the preview or developer description would. It seems like the main purpose of this game is to virtue signal and get woke points. So, honestly, if I was a developer and I was assigned to work on shit like that, I wouldn't give it anywhere near my best effort. Like, well, this game only exists to check a box, and I'm going to treat it that way. I'm just going to do my work to check a box.